Stoicism, virtue in a virtueless world. Ancient philosophy espoused by Socrates, Plato and Aristotle argued for the importance of the cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, moderation and justice, of which perhaps wisdom is the first amongst equals. In Plato's writings, Socrates points out that no man would willingly do harm to himself. So if a man has knowledge instead of ignorance, then he will make the right decisions. Wisdom is the antithesis then to ignorance, enabling us to think with clarity and act in the best rational way. We of course recognise that this is often flimsy with modern psychology. People often damage themselves, knowingly and willingly, such as with addiction. But thousands of years ago, the philosophers were seeking the virtues that would guide the idealised life. If, despite potential setbacks, we could choose one thing to aim at, wisdom is the key, according to the ancient philosophers, because ignorance is what truly counters man's aim to act in accordance with reason. If ignorant, reason cannot overcome mistakes. In almost every other situation, reason or rationality wins out. With Stoicism, they focused on wisdom alongside courage, justice and moderation, the cardinal virtues outlined by Plato in the Republic. The Stoics believed that these were the only true good, and that everybody should focus on virtue to live the best life. The belief that these were the paths to a term which approximates happiness and fulfillment, or eudaimonia. The Greek philosophers also believed in an idealised philosopher called the sage, the human that had in a sense achieved true virtue and enlightenment. The only other being, or non-being as you might define it, to achieve this was God. The sage was then what all philosophers aimed at, being perfectly virtuous and fulfilled, more of an ideal than a reality. The aforementioned virtues then were idealistically perfectly employed by the sage and God. In a sense then, this is unattainable, but it's what philosophers believed we should aim at. Philosophers themselves were said to be one better than the common person because at least they were conscious of their own imperfection and trying to improve it by being more virtuous. So even if it was an unattainable ideal, they were at least conscious and aiming at it. Is virtue redundant? Post-ancient Greece, philosophers such as Malebranche, Montaigne, Schopenhauer, de Spinoza all show some signs of being influenced by Stoicism. Indeed, in the modern day, Stoicism has definitely seen a resurgence. But is the emphasis on virtue somewhat redundant? Who has time to focus on being courageous, wise and virtuous when we're busy hustling, making money, picking kids up after school, trying to pay the bills and all the rest? Stoicism is often accused in the modern day of being overly simplistic, and the emphasis on virtue is often one of the ingredients to this. Later philosophers have asked why virtue or morality matter at all, particularly in the Nietzschean death of God. Now that some of the values provided by society, religion and tradition have been removed, it's time to re-evaluate all of them, Nietzsche argued. But I seek to propose a positive association with the self that isn't totally opposed to the Nietzschean view. Maybe it's that we do need a focus on virtue to build up the self and contribute to it, but we also adapt everything for the modern day without just listening to what society tells us. Virtuous actions seem a good basis for self-esteem. If we don't act like a coward, aim towards justice and creating a fair society, we don't just indulge in our own temporary and short-term pleasure, we adopt moderation, and maybe we don't also expose ourselves to too much pain in the Epicurean view. We aim for knowledge to best equip ourselves towards the right actions, and then we will have faith in ourselves to take on challenges that we face in life. Wisdom may not be the infallible goal that it was once thought as. Truth is not actually always helpful. If someone is suffering hugely already and it's of their own making, reminding them constantly of it is unlikely to help them get out of it. But in most situations it is a good direction. if we can take on knowledge, try to act in the best way that doesn't harm others, then it seems a sensible and worthy goal. And courage, justice and moderation help to shape that destiny in a desirable way. Problems of today. The problem isn't virtue itself then, it's that it's been devalued and deprioritised and nothing good has been held up to replace it instead. Although there is an increased focus on individualism, on personal prowess and achievement, even self-promotion, if you want to call it that, then maybe we've had a removal of values but not the re-evaluation that Nietzsche called for. A degree of achievement and pride is good, but not to the point of just showing off on social media, bragging, chasing money and comparing to others. These are things the Stoics warned against. Have you ever seen someone post hustle in silence and then post it unironically to social media? Clearly they're not very self-aware. And more importantly, they're truly prioritising the wrong things. Yet this kind of behaviour often gets applauded. What about the people who do act the best ethically then? Are they even a factor into the best names that one knows? How many super wealthy people can you name? How many people can you name that you look up to ethically and morally? I suspect that wealthy people come to mind far quicker than those who act in a virtuous way. And it's not necessarily your fault. It's partially society and the media's fault. We place the wrong emphases on what is important. If everybody acted ethically, we would not have corrupt politicians saying they'll act in certain ways and changing their minds when it suits them. Confidence in politicians remains super low in countries such as the UK. A politician may say all the right things and even go into the profession with genuinely good intentions. But when it becomes clear they either have to give it all up or compromise their beliefs to maintain their position by appeasing corporations that fund their party, they often end up making what is ethically the wrong decision. Perhaps it isn't this simple. They might have a family to feed after all. But the repercussions of their decision making go wider than that. They chose to be in a position, indeed a privileged and influential one, where their decisions will have significant repercussions on other people, which makes any abuse or exploitation all the more malignant. This is just one example where people with good intentions originally are influenced by the structure of society then, in some instances. We would argue that one of our best defences is our conscience. Asking ourselves, have we acted in the best way? A way where we display the virtues of wisdom, courage, moderation and justice is effective because it keeps us accountable. And I think if everybody acted like that, it's likely to engender positive societal change over time for the better. Even if Stoicism gets accused of being simplistic, it's a good foundation to start from. We have a history of societies also built on virtue. Sparta, with its flaws, at least did emphasise personal virtue, just as the Greek philosophers did. Even though philosophers such as Nietzsche sought a re-evaluation of all values, it was more that he thought society-driven ones, decided by institutions such as religion, meant that people, what he would call the slaves within slave morality, would blindly follow the values prescribed to them, rather than deciding what they actually need. A Spartan's reputation, prowess and status all depended on how well he exemplified virtue. Spartiate men belonged to a Sicyon, a military mess that also doubled as an eating and drinking club, but also members of the Sicyon would fight alongside each other in the Greek phalanx, formations of shields and spears going to war. If you had a poor reputation, were known as a coward or of ill repute, you would struggle to find one to join. And, as goes without saying, nobody wanted that. No one wanted to be left out. This could even be seen within pithy sayings, many of which we have recorded by the Roman scholar Plutarch. For example, talking too much was not seen as admirable. When someone was speaking at length, Labotus said, "Why do you give me such a long introduction to a small matter? The speech you make should be in proportion to the topic." From Plutarch's Spartan Sayings, Labotus. We now live in a world of proxies. Sexual promiscuity is overshared and rewarded, and not challenged. The damage is behind the scenes, especially in young people, who are losing the sense that sex should be a component of the development towards a meaningful and caring relationship, rather than pointless momentary pleasure. The uber wealthy sometimes get there by doing morally questionable things, yet can reinforce their position through lobbying, paying off counter interests or regulatory institutions, and grow in power and wealth. Politicians often set out a state of affairs, apparently morally decent, and then get discovered to be doing the exact opposite of the virtues they extol. Are these the values we want to continue to allow and reward? Can anyone really argue that any re-evaluation of values, if it has happened, has been effective? Our values have become so compromised that people want to do away with them all even. Philosophers such as Nietzsche said we should re-evaluate them, but do we really want to continue in an anarchic emptiness where the more extreme your moral degradation, the more you're rewarded? Some of the richest people are criminals who hide their activities in tax havens, for example. Are these examples the things that anyone truly thinks are beneficial to society and moving forward? It seems that we haven't really done this re-evaluation effectively. We've actually just stripped away values. Nietzsche may not have been wrong, but we definitely haven't found the right values if we even listened at all. Perhaps there's an argument then that we still need some values, and it may not need to be religious or defined by media or society, but we may need to go back to listen to the ancient philosophers such as the Stoics to learn them, or at least to get an idea of how to reintroduce our own, because clearly these lessons are being increasingly forgotten. Fortunately, despite the seeming gloom and doom, we have plenty of freedom and decision making in the West. But we should all still aspire to improve things for the better, and we can all start this on an individual level, even if we're all feeling the squeeze lately. We have made plans to help you understand what some of the ancient philosophers, Nietzsche, the Stoics, psychology and mythology have to say. We can fix things, challenging though it feels, by being influenced by some of history's greatest thinkers and fighters. That's exactly what we've done at Spartan Stoic Training, a set of self-development programs that avoid the need for you to trawl through countless difficult books and teachings. Check out the link in the description, and thanks for watching. We hope to see you there.